Imagine a world without antibiotics. Difficult, isn't it? To comprehend this, we need to travel back in time to the inception of these miraculous drugs. Our journey begins in the year 1928 in the laboratory of a Scottish bacteriologist named Alexander Fleming. One day, Fleming returned from a holiday to find something peculiar in his petri dish. A mold known as Penicillium notatum had contaminated his Staphylococcus cultures. Instead of discarding the dish, Fleming noticed something extraordinary. The mold was stopping the growth of the bacteria. What might have been dismissed as a spoiled experiment turned out to be a pivotal moment in medical history. Fleming had stumbled upon the first antibiotic, which he aptly named penicillin. This wasn't a result of a meticulously planned experiment, but rather a fortunate accident. Antibiotics derive from the Greek words anti, meaning against, and bios, meaning life, are substances that kill bacteria or stop them from growing. Penicillin, the first of many antibiotics, was a game changer. Before its discovery, even a minor bacterial infection could prove fatal, and surgeries were fraught with the risk of post-operative infections. With the advent of penicillin, the medical field was no longer helpless against bacterial infections. Doctors now had a powerful tool in their arsenal. Penicillin and the many antibiotics that followed transformed medicine. From battling pneumonia and tuberculosis to preventing infections during surgeries, antibiotics have been quite literally lifesavers. Fleming's accidental discovery paved the way for the development of a multitude of antibiotics. Each new antibiotic gave us a fresh line of defense against bacterial infections, turning once deadly diseases into manageable conditions. Little did Fleming know his accidental discovery would revolutionize medicine and save millions of lives worldwide. Antibiotics, since their discovery, have been the saviors of countless lives. These microscopic warriors have been waging wars on our behalf against the relentless armies of bacterial infections that threaten our existence. Consider this: before the advent of antibiotics, something as trivial as a minor cut or a common cold could escalate into a life-threatening situation. Bacterial infections like pneumonia or tuberculosis claimed countless lives, with doctors virtually powerless against their onslaught. But with antibiotics, we finally had a weapon to fight back. These powerful drugs don't just cure infections, they prevent potential complications and, in many cases, certain death. From strep throat to sepsis, antibiotics have been our first line of defense, effectively neutralizing the bacterial invaders and restoring health. But the role of antibiotics extends far beyond just treating infections. They've made possible medical advancements that we now take for granted. Imagine undergoing a surgery without the safety net of antibiotics to ward off potential post-operative infections. Or consider the plight of cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy, a treatment that weakens the immune system and leaves the body vulnerable to infections. Without antibiotics, these medical procedures would be akin to navigating a minefield blindfolded. Let's not forget organ transplants. The success of these life-saving procedures hinges on the ability to control bacterial infections post-surgery. Without antibiotics, the risks associated with transplants would skyrocket, potentially making them too dangerous to perform. So, in essence, antibiotics have not just cured diseases, they've made life safer and indeed longer. By combating previously incurable infections, they've contributed significantly to increasing our life expectancy. In a nutshell, antibiotics have been the superheroes of modern medicine, silently protecting us against potentially lethal enemies. They've been our invisible shields, our microscopic guardians, our lifesavers, and while they may not wear capes or leap tall buildings, their impact on our world has been nothing short of heroic. But what if our superheroes lose their powers? What if antibiotics stopped working? This is a question we must face as we confront the growing issue of antibiotic resistance. Antibiotic resistance happens when bacteria evolve in response to the use of these medicines. These bacteria change and adapt, learning how to survive and grow in the presence of antibiotics that were designed to kill them. This isn't a futuristic nightmare scenario, it's happening right now, all around us. Imagine a battlefield. The antibiotics are our soldiers and the bacteria are the enemy. Every time we deploy our soldiers, the enemy watches, learns, and adapts. Over time, our regular troops become less effective. They start losing battles. This is what happens when we misuse or overuse antibiotics. Overuse is a significant problem. We've come to rely heavily on these drugs, using them not only to treat infections, but also to promote growth in livestock or to prevent possible future infections. This over-reliance has created an environment where bacteria have ample opportunity to learn and adapt. Misuse is another critical factor. When we don't complete a course of antibiotics, or when we use them to treat viral infections against which they're powerless, we're effectively training the bacteria, showing them how our weapons work without fully defeating them. The consequences of antibiotic resistance are severe. Treatments become less effective, resulting in longer illnesses, more hospital stays, and in some cases, a lack of cure altogether. It leads to higher medical costs, both for individuals and society. But most importantly, it increases mortality. Diseases that were once easily curable could become deadly again. In essence, our misuse and overuse of antibiotics are turning these life-saving drugs into ticking time bombs. They're becoming less effective and we're running out of options. As we stand on the brink of this potential medical catastrophe, we must remember that antibiotics aren't just another type of medicine. They're our superheroes, our last line of defense against bacterial infections, and right now they're losing their powers. Our misuse of antibiotics is turning them from life-saving drugs into potential harbingers of medical doom. A world without effective antibiotics isn't just a dystopian fantasy. It is a real possibility that could send us back to the dark ages of medicine. Imagine a world where a simple scrape on the knee could turn fatal, where surgeries become high-risk procedures and where chemotherapy becomes a gamble too dangerous to take. The loss of effective antibiotics would see the return of once-conquered diseases, turning them into deadly threats. Pneumonia, tuberculosis, and other infections could again become leading causes of death. Surgeries and treatments that we consider routine today, like hip replacements or organ transplants, would carry much higher risks due to the threat of infection. In this potential post-antibiotic era, even childbirth could become perilous. Without antibiotics to combat potential infections, the miracle of life could once again carry a heavy price. Without effective antibiotics, the future of medicine could be grim, making the fight against antibiotic resistance not just important, but essential for our survival. If you liked the video, please consider to like and subscribe. Till the next time.